I'm super excited to sit down with the brand new Radiomir releases from Panerai with the Brunito finish. I'm Elizabeth with Oliver Smith Jeweler. We've been dealing with Panerai for over 20 years and now have 2 boutiques, both in Aspen and Scottsdale. So this is a first ever for Panerai, this Brunito case, and it's a really interesting design process. So it starts with Panerai's esteel, which is a recycled steel. We're seeing them release that on quite a few watches now, and I believe with the goal of having all their watches made of this recycled steel by 2026. So they start with an esteel, and then they put a PVD coating onto the case. It's not DLC. I've read online that people thought the Brunito finish was DLC, but it is done in the PVD method. So once that black coating is on the case, then they hand polish the case to make it look a little bit worn, a little bit vintage, have some wear to it. So that's where you get the gray steel revealed beneath the black finishing. If you want to know what the full PVD looked like, you can actually take a look at the crown. You see how that's all solid black around the OP. That's how it originally started. They just can't get in there for the polishing. Panerai has announced that 2023 is the year of the Radiomir. So we're seeing a lot of new releases in the Radiomir collection this year. Radiomir was the original style of Panerai. So before the crown guard that we all know and love, there was the onion crown on the Radiomir style. So very vintage, and this is a opportunity for Panerai to play back to those vintage historic pieces. Now let's take a look at the dial. There are 2 watches in this collection. We have the brown dial, that's the PAM 1347, and then a blue dial, the PAM 1348. The dials themselves have a burnt chemical look to them. And again, that's on purpose, going back to the early days of Panerai. So before the luminescence we know today, they actually used a radioactive substance, which is where we get the name Radiomir from, to highlight the numbers and dashes, make them glow underwater as a dive watch. So that radioactive material was also on the hands, and as the hands spun around on the watch, they burnt the dial below. That's where you also get the name tropical dial, where it's lighter in the center and darker on the outside from the burning of the hands. We get that same design look in these watches. You've got the lighter color in the center, and then as you work your way out, darker in the coloring. So you can get that vintage burnt look without having to have a radioactive watch on your wrist. The final historical note on this watch is the movement. This is an 8-day manual wind movement from Panerai, the P5000. And again, going back to the early days of Panerai, they had a manual wind 8-day movement. For you movement fans, also you're going to love the back of this watch. We have a sapphire case back, so you can see the movement revealed below. The manual wind 8-day is a great movement. You really don't have to wind it as much as you think. I've worn Panerais with an 8-day movement before. It's actually really convenient. The movement itself is not very thick. It's 4.5 millimeters thick, and overall this watch is about 14 millimeters thick on the wrist. Even as our videographer said, this is a thinner Panerai. The movements, the technology is getting better, the watches are getting a little thinner. It's 45 millimeter case, so it does wear large on the wrist, but it's nice. It's not sitting so high on the wrist. I also want to note these straps that come with the watch are this amazing calf leather. They're incredibly soft. They're going to fit your wrist right away. No need to break these straps in, and they're just going to be extremely comfortable. Also, a great note, the buckle. The buckle also has this Brunito finish on it. Great detail, really thoughtful, ties the whole watch together.